Hello and welcome back to the channel. I am your host Tyrant, and today we are embarking on another resin art project. I really enjoy these types of projects, and I like warships, I like sea monsters, so the idea of combining two things that interest me, in that warships and galleons with sea monsters, is a really fun project, or at least to me it is. So here I have a small warship galleon. Now this little model kit only cost me about $30 to $40, and luckily it's actually a snap together kit, so it's pretty straightforward, easily following the instructions and just snapping together all the various parts. After that, it's just a little bit of a tedious process moving all the injection molded parts from their sprues. So the inspiration for today's piece actually came from this image here. I saw this image probably when I was a little kid, I liked sea monsters as a kid. I always remembered this one always stuck with me. So I thought, why not do a resin art piece about it? So that's what today's project is about. Now I gave the lower deck a base coat of matte black before I continued on with the assembly, because I was worried that I wasn't going to be able to reach it with paint later on. Then we attach things like the masts and the rigging. I gave the entire model a matte black base coat. I then pulled out my airbrush and gave the entire ship a brown coating. The sails, I like red, Tyrant red as we call it, so that is the color I decided to go with the sails. I would brush on a generous helping of paint and lightly remove it with a sponge. This will leave behind a tiny bit of the red, giving the sails a nice subdued red color. After that, we're going to move on to the small detail work. I'm using a very small brush to give color to things like the rigging and the cannon barrels. After that, I'm going to use the red that I used on the sails and add a little bit of detailing work. I'm just going with the flow and making up the colors as I go along. I'm quite happy with the color scheme that I ended up on. We're moving on to the Kraken. Now the Kraken is just a $3 to $4 toy that I picked up from a local store. Just like the ship, I gave it a base coat of black. I decided on a green, but a sort of off green, something a little bit alien. And then with that done, all I did was give it some red eyes, painted the suckers a mix between a pink and reddish hue, and that's the Kraken done. So when it came time to actually mixing the resin and doing the resin portion of this project, I wasn't actually entirely sure how I wanted to go about it. I knew that I wanted the Kraken to be fighting the warship, but I wasn't sure if I wanted it to be the Galleon on top with the Kraken rising above, and getting the Kraken in the depths of the ocean with its full body, or if I wanted to do more of a surface one where the tentacles are coming up out of the ocean and the Galleon is getting caught in its clutches. I decided to go with the pose where the Galleon is in the clutches of the Kraken because it was very reminiscent of Pirates of the Caribbean, which is a really cool scene where the Black Pearl gets taken down by the Kraken. So I thought this would be a good homage to that scene. Perhaps in a future project I'll do the entirety of the Kraken under the water fighting the Galleon on top, but for today's project this is the pose that I decided to go with. Next up is the base. Now the base that I used for this project is actually a desk organizer. It cost me about $3 to $4 from a local shop. It's just a plastic encased base just to hold the resin. I will use some hot glue to attach the Kraken parts where I think that they look good, and then it's time to finally start mixing some resin. Now, I actually used 3 different hues of blue for the ocean. I used a darker resin right on the bottom of the base, then a lighter blue to make up the bulk of the resin, and a very, very dark blue to go around where the ship would be, where the tentacles were popping up from the ocean, to give the resin a little bit more depth, so it looks like the tentacles and the Kraken are rising from the depths of the ocean. Now after this, I waited about 6 to 7 hours. I have a 12-hour curing resin, meaning about the halfway point the resin is a little bit tacky, it's no longer liquid, so I'm able to sculpt in some texture, and I'm also able to put some plastic that won't stick to the resin on the base of the ship. This will give me a perfect shape of the ship, meaning the ship is removable. It doesn't actually have to stay on the resin base. An old friend, Mod Podge gives us a beautiful sort of smaller wave texture. I use my airbrush to simulate waves and the ocean. After waiting for that to dry, I will use a very small paintbrush and some white paint to simulate the water breaking against the tentacles of the Kraken, and after that we just need to paint up the gun barrels. Any warship of course would fight against the Kraken. I'll use a yellow hue to simulate the muzzle flash, and then some cotton to simulate the smoke. Here it is, the finished art piece. I couldn't be happier with the results of this one. It was a very fun project. I really enjoyed doing it. As I've said a couple of times, I quite enjoy doing these resin art projects, and this one was no different. In fact, it's actually my favorite to date. I think I keep saying that every time I do a new one, but this one is definitely my hands down my favorite at this point. Now, I actually have another resin art project. I actually have several in the works, but I do have my largest resin art project to date currently in the works. It's going to be quite a lot bigger than anything I've ever attempted before, but that's in an upcoming video. But for today's video, I genuinely hope you enjoyed. Remember to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Leave a comment down below of what you thought of today's project, and as always guys, I will see you in another video. Have a good one.